Good evening. My name is John Henry, and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action and Study seminar, we're going to go through the first 164 pages of the Big Book, the recovery section, and we're going to do the work that the first 100 people who recovered said we have to do to overcome this hopeless condition of mind and body. I borrow heavily from the Golden Slippers, from Joe and Charlie, from Clancy, and from all of the giants who have gone before me. Now, I don't claim to be any big book guru or any kind of top 10 spiritualist. I'm just a simple drunk. I was almost dead from the disease. When I finally became willing to do the action in our book, I was able to recover and have a pretty good life. So I'm hoping that there's 2s and 3s and 4s of you listening to this together. You're going to need a big book. I like the large print big book, highlighter and pen. I'm going to try to get some of the paperwork that I've got online. And please bring your willingness. Please bring your willingness and your open mind. And as you're going to see, we open every session with the set-aside prayer so that we may be more open to receiving this information. Thanks for listening. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John.
I'm going to do an abbreviated version here about Max C. I think you guys know about Max C by now, who started the group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Back to the Basics. It's basically what we do here, and we've got so much to cover today. I'm just going to say that we recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. The study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. So this is our last session, and I have some of the Code Blue flyers up there, and I've got 2 different flyers. You know, they say that this is, you know, one of the traditions is attraction rather than promotion. I was sitting in an AA room and I was dying. And if this salesman guy wouldn't have got up and said, this is specifically tailored to chronic relapsers, people that are restless, irritable, and discontent, I probably wouldn't have taken it. And so, being a salesman myself, I don't see any conflict telling people that this is for chronic relapsers and it's going to save your life. So one of these is specifically for chronic relapsers. Are you fighting the obsession to drink on a daily basis all by yourself? Have you stopped drinking but you're still restless, irritable, and discontent? Life still sucks. Right? And it talks about the relief being found in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous found in our book. And I also put, if you're willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol and drugs, please sign up. Now there's another one basically that just for people that maybe would be offended if we called them a chronic relapser, and that just talks about journeying through the first 164 pages, and it talks about working the steps. And it does say 50% who came to AA and really tried, did all 12 steps, recovered at once, and remained that way, and 25% sobered up after some relapses. So that's in the big book on page XX. I believe in what I've seen in my limited 5.5 years is people that have worked all 12 steps, I've seen 100% recover of them. Here they're saying there's 3 out of 4. You know what? I'll take 3 out of 4, because when you go to the meetings today, we're lucky if we get 30%. We're lucky if we get 20%. A lot of places we're lucky if we get 5%. So I'll take 75% any day. But again, that's for the people who do the work. So grab flyers, pass them out.
John, is there a prerequisite for your course to also have speed reading and writing?
Yes, you got to be quick. But hey, I have proof of concept. So a fella is going to be able to post this online, and he said he's actually going to be able to put the paperwork online too. So we have one session, but it comes up if you type in Code Blue Big Book. It actually comes up, but we only have the introduction. And he says that hopefully by tomorrow he'll have all the other sessions posted online. And this guy assures me that he'll be able to get the paperwork too. So I'm going to gather all that up for him. So Code Blue Big Book should bring it up. So fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube, but I tried it out. I just typed in the keywords and boom, it came right up. And I'm like, yeah, baby. So this guy's pretty good. I work with him, Barry. So thanks to Barry. I want to get him into. I keep every time Code Blue comes around. I said, are you ready yet? Because he does encounter more misery with every passing day. So one of these days he'll be in here too. So last week we did. Last week was about step 12. Let me find it. Was working with others, the chapter that basically tells us how to approach people and how to work with people and what to do and when to cut them loose. And as always, we ran out of time. I just have a few more things that I want to talk about. So I think everybody was here last week, and when we talked about the 6 things to look for in a sponsor, I got this from a fellow named Matt. And again, that was sober was 1, done the work, he's done the 12 steps was 2, has a sponsor, that's very important. Somebody who's willing to tell you the truth even when it hurts, right? That's very important. And I really want somebody who's active in service work, because when we're grateful for things, we tend to express that gratitude through action. And I always like somebody that likes to have fun, somebody that laughs. I think, when was it? It was on Christmas Eve. I had 3 guys newly sober over to my house, and we watched the Vikings get killed, but we had a lot of fun. So those are 6 things to look at, and those are things that you want to be yourself when you become a sponsor, because the whole idea of this Code Blue, once we've done the steps, right? We've done our 1, 2, 3. We've done our 4th step. We've had somebody listen to our 5th step. We've looked at our defects and asked God to take them away in 6 and 7. And we've got our list for people that we've got to make amends to. I was taught by my sponsor that once you've made 2 or 3 amends, you're good to go. You're good to raise your hand at meetings. And when he told me to do that, and again, I raised my hand, and Eric, who was here when he said, hey, will you sponsor me? It was an all-out panic. I mean, I was just completely terrified. And, I called my sponsor and I, yelled at him. I said, I don't know what to do. I'm going to kill the guy, right? And he explained, no, what you're going to do is you're going to take him through the book just like we did in Code Blue, and you're going to guide him through the 4th and the 5th step, and you're going to guide him through 8 and 9, and if you don't know what to do, you're going to call me, and if I don't know what to do, I'm going to call my sponsor. So that's all you're going to do. And he said, by the way, it's not up to you, it's up to God, and it's up to Eric. If he does the work, he's going to get better. And funny enough, that proved to be the case. I have people say, John, I hear people in AA talk about the spiritual side of AA. And they say, well, if there's a spiritual side, what's the other side? And I kind of look at them and I say, well, the other side is the drunk side. Right? We got the spiritual side and we got the drunk side. And you know what? Somebody that says, well, John, I'm an atheist, so that God stuff that's out of the question for me. I go, that's okay. That's okay. Let's start the work. And we just go through the book and we start doing exactly what we did here, and we see what happens. So we're not going to let that deter us. A fella named, I'm sure some of you have heard of the guy named Clancy. I got this from Clancy. He said, one of the things he said that we do when we're trying to help other people, because we all think that we're different, right? He said, we've got to convince people that they are enough like us, they're enough like us so that they'll begin to take actions, right, the 12 steps, that they don't believe in and that they don't think are going to work. And they also think that they're a waste of time, right? We've got to convince them that they're enough like us so they'll start to do these things whether or not they believe in them. And I know what I wanted to do when I came into AA. I wanted to find enough differences so that I could say, see you later, and I could go out and start drinking so I could feel better, right? And then I wanted to say AA didn't work for me, and I did that for years. There's an old adage, and the adage is, give a man to fish, and he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, and he eats for a lifetime. Right? People come into AA and they say, give me fish, I want fish, give me fish. And they get really angry and pissed off when instead of giving them fish, we give them fishing lessons. But that's what we do. We're not going to give these people fish. We're going to teach them how to fish, right? We don't want to do anything for these people that they could be doing for themselves, right? Another guy I heard, and I wish I would have done this, I didn't do it, but if you're within your first year or two, or maybe even 3 of sobriety, he said you should write down what you want over the next 10 years. Just write it down, close it up in an envelope and put it away. And he said pull it out 10 years later, and you're going to be amazed because you don't know what's good for you and you don't know what you should have, and God's going to give you things that are far greater than anything that you can imagine. And for me, I didn't know that I was going to have unbelievable friendships, fellowships, and I was going to have an ability to care and help other people, because that's something I never had. And I certainly never had a relationship with a higher power, so kind of cool. Oh, and then I love this. I just, and I'm going to talk a little bit about writing things down that I hear. I heard a gal the other day, and she said the 3 signs of immaturity, right? She said, number 1, you're impatient. Right? Number 2, you want to play God, right? And by playing God, you get angry when bad things happen, when people die, and maybe you're going to lie to change outcomes. And number 3, you can't handle frustration. And when I heard her, and I really thought about it, I said, my God, I'm one of the most immature people in the world, when I really thought about it. And I looked at that. It's just amazing. And again, I want everybody to know that our spiritual condition is not about the way we feel. Remember in steps 10 and 11, it said that we get a reprieve based on the maintenance, right? Because we're all going to have troubles, we're all going to have bad days. And our spiritual condition is not the way we feel. AA is about actions, the way we behave on the outside, right? So it's the things that we do, because again, if I'm having a really tough day, into the record books, they're not going to say, Johnny was really depressed that day, he was having a hard time. What they're going to write down is, what did I do? Was I kind to people? Was I tolerant? Was I patient? Did I try to contribute to life rather than take? And again, in AA, we're backwards people, because all other therapies, they try to change the way that you think, right? And when you do that, then you can change the way you act. We're backwards because in AA, we've got to change the way we act first. We go to meetings, we try to be kind, we do these actions, and once we act our way into better thinking, essentially, is what happens. So we're backwards. I love that. And I used to think that conditions on the outside drove me to drink, right? Oh, it's that boss, it's that girlfriend, it's that cop. It never ever occurred to me that I had to change myself to meet these conditions like everybody else does, right? Like normal people do. So we're gonna, and you can, at the end of the chapter, so somewhere around 103 where we wrote down the sponsor stuff, let's write something else. We're gonna write AA number 3, 4 questions, page 186, right? And we're gonna go there. Now this was, Dr. Bob was sober 10 days with Bill Wilson when they went into the hospital. That's the picture of the man on the bed, and they met with Bill Dotson. So we're going to go over to page 186, and these are 4 questions that were asked of Bill Dotson, and I just love them. And we can ask these or a version of them to people that we're trying to help. So on page 186, let's go from the top, 1, 2, 3. Let's go to the 4th line. Near the end of the 3rd line, where it says, do you want to quit drinking? Highlight that and put a 1 next to it. Do you want to quit drinking? Okay. Now we're going to go to the next paragraph, right, where it says, and we're going to highlight where it says the next thing they wanted to know. Highlight the next 4 lines. The next thing they wanted to know was if I thought I could quit of my own accord without any help. If I could just walk out of the hospital and never take another drink. That's the 2nd question. Now we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more lines, right? So put a 2 next to that. And then where it says the next thing. So let's highlight from the next thing. 1, 2, 3. We're going to highlight 4 lines. The next thing they wanted to know was if I'm sorry, it's just the 1 line. The next thing they wanted to know was if I believed in a higher power. Okay, that's the next question we're going to ask them. And some people are going to say, no, I'm an atheist. You know what? Then we know that we're going to have to spend some more time on step 2. I had no trouble there because I'd never actually ceased to believe in God and tried lots of times to get help but hadn't succeeded. So now let's highlight where it says next, highlight to the end of the paragraph. Next, they wanted to know, would I be willing to go to this higher power and ask for help calmly and without reservations? So those are 4 questions that they asked, and those are 4 questions we can ask people we're trying to help. You know, hopefully that first one, do you want to quit drinking? Oh my God, I sure do. My life's a mess, right? We get a yes on that. We go to the next, you know. Do you think you can quit on your own? Oh my God, I've tried that so many times and I've always gone back to drinking. You know, but most people still think they might. But that's the second question. And then, you know, the higher power. And if they say, you know, yes, we're just going to kind of tailor what we need to work on with these people based on their answers to us, right? And you know, if they have no problem with the higher power, you know, are you? Because a lot of people believe in God, but they don't think that God's going to have any business in helping them in their lives, right? So that's step, you know, question 4. You know, would you be willing to go to that higher power and ask for help calmly without reservation? So those are just four questions that are pretty cool. Another thing, and I got this from Clancy also, he said one huge benefit of working with other people is when you're thinking about that sorry SOB, you're not thinking of this sorry SOB, and I'm pointing at myself, right? So if I'm not thinking of my emotional insecurity, my worry, my anger, my self-pity, my depression, right? Because I'm thinking about helping this other guy, I get out of myself. Also, in the margin at the end of working with others, we're going to write 5 words. These are 5 words on things that we try to practice when we go to meetings or just when we're learning anything from anybody. The first one is to be quiet. Okay, so that's number 1. Be quiet. I got a sponsee right now. I mean, he just asked me to help him last Thursday, and this guy won't shut up. He will not shut up. So, you know, one of the things is, man, and he scares people. You go to meetings, I want you to be quiet, right? Be quiet. That's number 1. Number 2 is listen. Listen. You know, a lot of times, particularly in my early days, I'd leave a meeting and I couldn't remember a damn thing because the committee in my head was going so fast, so I didn't even listen, right? The third thing is remember. Remember, and that's why you see me with, like, I grab any old notebook in my car. That's why I got 20 notebooks full of stuff, because I get out there and I scribble as fast as I can, because I'm not going to remember it otherwise. So be quiet, listen, remember. Number 4 is practice. We hear something that we like, that we think is going to help us or going to help another person. Let's put it into practice. Let's try it. Let's try it. That guy looked pretty good. I like what he had to say, and he explained how it helped him. Let me try that thing in my life. Practice. Number 5 is teach. Teach. Right? We practice it. It seems to be working for us. We are going to try to teach it to other people. People say, well, you can't teach the 12 steps. I say, nonsense. Of course you can teach the 12 steps. We practice them in our lives and then we teach them to other people. That's exactly what we do. So, you know, I remember when I got out of detox, I remember the first meeting I went to, I couldn't sit still for 10 minutes. I had to get up and leave. I couldn't even sit still and I couldn't be quiet. But after I calmed down a little bit, you know, be quiet, listen, remember, practice, and then teach other people, right? And again, I said this before, if we don't change, because I can go to a lot of meetings and stay off the sauce, I can do that, but if we don't change, we're going to drink again, man. And you know, it might be 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 years, or it might be 30 years, but if we don't change, sooner or later, we're going to drink again. And you know, some people have managed to hang on for a long time, but I don't think they're very happy, right? I was completely miserable when I had, you know, months of sobriety without working these steps. And I said this before, you know, what we do when we're helping other people, you know, God. We've never made a mistake, at least I haven't, and nobody I know has. We've never made a mistake so ugly that God can't turn that into something magnificent, and we do that by helping other people. I don't care if you killed somebody when you were drunk in a blackout. We're going to turn that around and we're going to talk about it and we're going to share that with other people and we're going to try to turn that horrible, horrible thing into something that is helping and saving other people, right? And we're going to go, well, on that note, we're going to turn over to page 124. Page 124. And we're going to highlight a little thing on page 124. So we're on the first full paragraph on page 124. And we're going to highlight this pretty much the whole paragraph there. Henry Ford once made a wise remark to the effect that experience is a thing of supreme value in life. That is true only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. The alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset of the family, and frequently it is almost the only one. Okay, so I'm gonna keep reading the whole next paragraph, which I think is very important too. This painful past may be of infinite value to other families still struggling with their problem. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not. And when the occasion requires, each member of it should be only too willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. So we're going to, put a big asterisk next to this last part. Showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. Cling to the thought that in God's hand, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. So we take what were our liabilities, right? The things that were killing us and these horrible things we've done, and we turn them into our greatest assets by sharing them and helping other people. Princess Leia just died, and I saw her little excerpt on TV, and she said, all of these horrible defects of characters that I have and all these problems that I have, when I talk about them, number one, they lose their power. Right? So like for me, if I'm at a meeting and I'm feeling like I'm going to use, when I share the fact, oh my God, I really wanted to use today, when I share that, it loses power. And when I talk about these ugly things to other people, I gain strength. I gain strength because I'm helping them, and I'm turning my defects and my mistakes into assets, and that's just so important, and that's what we do. And that's people when they identify with some of the things we've done, and they see us now, they're going to say, my God, maybe this thing can work for me. Maybe it can. All right, so we are going to go. We are now on, and I'm going to be reading fast. Do you think I read fast before? We're on A Vision for You, chapter 11. There's a lot, so I'm going to be going. I'm going to be going a little bit fast, and we might go 5 minutes or so over today. Page 151, A Vision for You. For most normal folk, not us, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is the joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. Highlight the next two sentences, the next two lines. But not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. Right? So next to that, you can just write consequences. And I mean, you guys can think about how drinking started out to be fun, how it allowed you to talk to people, it let you come out and play and gave you freedom. But think about the consequences and maybe how early they started, right? They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure, right? We always took that first drink. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. As we became subjects of King Alcohol, highlight King Alcohol, and just off to the left, right, was our God. He's capitalized it. That was our God. Because, again, it allowed us to do things we could never do. Shivering denizens of his mad realm. Now, funny enough, Shivering Denizens is the name. I'm in a sober fantasy football league, and I just beat the Shivering Denizens in the Fantasy Bowl. So that's one of the name of his team. I love it. Shivering denizens of his mad realm. The chilling vapor that his loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen. Highlight the four horsemen. terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. Just highlight them. So those are our 4 horsemen, right? That's what we get. Off to the right, we're going to write pestilence, war, famine, and death. The biblical 4 horsemen. Pestilence, war, famine, and death. You know, for me, I remember waking up, oh my God, what did I do? What happened? How did this happen? Damn it, it happened again. I'll never get better, right? In a nutshell, there's our 4 horsemen. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. We're going to highlight to the end of the page. Now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, I don't miss it all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally. You can stop highlighting there. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. Now, I put me after that because that's exactly where I was. I was contemplating suicide quite heavily because I couldn't live with the booze and I couldn't live without it. I didn't know what to do, right? So if that applies to you, write me right there. And off to the left, write step 1, suicide. Step 1, suicide, right? And not uncommon for us at all. And you're going to meet sponsees that are thinking that, right? Underline the next 5 words, or I guess the next sentence. We have shown how we got out from under. Just that sentence. You say, yes, I'm willing, but am I to be consigned to a life, underline, where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum? Just those little thing there. Like some righteous people I see. I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? So next to that paragraph, just write, come along with us. Come along with us. And you know, the first time I went through Code Blue, I got something that I'd never had in my life. So you know what I did? They started another one right after. I went through another Code Blue. And you know what? I'd never had that before. When the third one, I did that one too. And then pretty soon I started reading and greeting, and then I started doing them. Because I got something in my life that I'd never had before. Yes, there is a substitute, and is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. Next to that, write promise. That's a wonderful promise. How is that to come about, you ask? Where am I to find these people? You are going to meet these new friends in your own community. Near you, alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds, high and low, rich and poor. These are future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Among them you will make lifelong friends. You will be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together. And you will, highlight the next 3 lines, commence shoulder to shoulder your common journey. Then you will know what it means to give of yourself that others may survive and rediscover life. So next to that, again, we're going to write promise. There's another promise. I think just by going through these steps, it's a natural progression that you're going to want to share these with other people. It's just a natural progression. You will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respected, and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopelessness? Underline the next sentence. The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen with you. Okay, so next to that, we're going to write, we are not alone. We're not alone. Most alcoholics, they come into these rooms and they are tortured by loneliness. Even when they're in a room full of people, they feel like they're completely alone, right? At least I sure did. Should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that. Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it to follow its suggestions. Many, we are sure, will rise to their feet and march on. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city and hamlet, havens for those who must find a way out. In the chapter Working with Others, you gathered an idea of how we approach and aid others to health. Suppose now that through you, several families have adopted this way of life. You will want to know more of how to proceed from that point. Perhaps the best way of treating you to a glimpse of your future will be to describe the growth of the fellowship among us. Here is a brief account. Another thing too, you can write is Alcoholics Comes of Age. That's kind of a really just a good the early growth and history of AA. Years ago, in 1935, one of our number, you can write Bill W. next to that. Years ago in 1935, one of our number made a journey to a certain western city. Right? You can write Akron. From a business standpoint, his trip came off badly. Had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set on his feet financially. Okay, so underline financially, which at the time seemed vitally important. Okay, so next to that, we're going to write Bill 6 months sober. Bill 6 months sober. But his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceeding was shot through with much hard feeling and controversy. And that was a mistake that I always made, man. I'd get out of treatment and I would say, as a human being, I don't have any value because I'm not working and I don't have any money. Right? I was an empty shell of a man, and the only thing I knew what to do was to work and have some money, and if I did that, I would have value. And I would always run right back to work, and I would never work on my sobriety or my recovery, and I never got better. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke. Still physically weak and sober but a few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom? One dismal afternoon, he paced a hotel lobby. Next to that, you can write Mayflower Hotel, Akron. Mayflower Hotel, Akron. One dismal afternoon, he paced a hotel lobby wondering how his bill was to be paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, a door opened into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside. In there, he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape up an acquaintance and would have a lonely weekend. All right, so his brain is thinking now, right? Of course he couldn't drink. But why not sip hopefully at a table a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now? Perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks, no more. Right above 3 drinks, write insane thought. That's an insane thought. And even I don't care how long you've been sober, particularly when you're in early sobriety. But now and again, we're gonna get those thoughts. I'll never forget when I was on my meeting. I think to the first Code Blue, I'd been sober maybe 7 months, and I was stopped at a stoplight, and all of a sudden I looked over, and there was a liquor store, and I looked at that liquor store, and I could see all these pretty bottles sitting there, and oh my God, I've never tried that. Oh, but I wonder what that, all of a sudden oh my God, what am I doing, right? And I just turned green and I took off. But it was an insane thought. And if we, they're going to pass. These thoughts are going to pass. What we don't do is we don't act on them. I mean, if you say a prayer, you call your sponsor if you have to. But in most cases, I mean, like with me, I just say, oh my goodness, John, you ridiculous idiot. And the thought, the thought's going to pass. Go to a meeting, call a sponsee, do something else, right? And fear gripped him, right? When he thought about this, he got terrified because he remembered what happened to him the last time. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, it was the old insidious insanity, that first drink. With a shiver, he turned away and walked down the lobby to the church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar, right? So next to that last sentence, you can write obsession. Okay, we've got a Vision for You Part 2. My recording device ran out of room, so it's a week later, and I'm going to finish A Vision for You. I'm going to try to recreate the enthusiasm I had. However, I am by myself on a snowy, wintry January at my kitchen table, so that might be difficult. These things are always better when we read them and we share them with other people present. And of course, when other people are here, we also have the presence of God. So, music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar. So again, he is on thin ice, and he is saying, hey, am I going to go into that bar? What am I going to do? But what about his responsibilities, his family, and the men who would die because they would not know how to get well? We're going to highlight that. Who would die because they would not know how to get well. Ah, yes, those other alcoholics. Stop highlighting there. And off to the left, we're going to write the remedy. The remedy. So what Bill's doing here is he's thinking of other people. He's not thinking of his own self-pity. He's not thinking of his own self-centeredness. He's thinking of other people, and that's the remedy. Like I said earlier, you know, what I got from Clancy, when we're thinking about that other SOB, we're not thinking about this SOB with the thumb pointing squarely at my chest. That's the remedy. There must be many such in this town. He would phone a clergyman. Highlight, his sanity returned and he thanked God. Just that little sentence right there. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this on the last part, but we have aahistorylover.com is a website that we can get on, and we can look up some of these names and some of these places. It's kind of cool when we got them highlighted in our book and we got these names written down, and we get on and we read about these people, and we see some pictures. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into a booth and lifted the receiver. His call to the clergyman, and the clergyman off to the right, we're going to write Reverend Walter Tunks. That's Walter Tunks, Tunks. His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town who, though formerly able and respected, was then nearing the nadir, underline nadir, and that's the low point of alcoholic despair. So next to that, we're going to write Dr. Bob. So, you know, guys, what happened here is Bill sees the bar with the smoke and the tingling of glasses and the soft music and the laughter, and he's looking and he's saying, oh my God, does that look good? But all of a sudden he gets the idea that if he goes in there, he's going to get drunk and everything is going to be lost, everything he's been working for. Now, he called the clergyman, and the clergyman gave him another phone number to a woman named Henrietta Seiberling. And he got on the phone, and of course the story goes, she picked it up he was just about to hang up when she picked it up after the 10th ring or something like that. And Bill said, look here, I'm a stockbroker from New York, and I've got a possible cure for alcoholism. Do you have anybody in this town that I might be able to talk to? And Henrietta Seiberling, of course, knew Dr. Bob, and they were members of the Oxford group. And funny enough, Henrietta Seiberling and many of the other members had been praying for a solution to Dr. Bob's problem. And so when all of a sudden this stranger from New York called up and said, hey, do you got a drunk I can help? Henrietta Seiberling just simply viewed that as an answer to the prayers. So she was not surprised at all to receive that call, right? This crazy guy from New York, that's what she had been praying for. Who, though formerly able and respected, was then nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. Okay, we're going to highlight the next 3 lines. It was the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, and standing damaged. You know, just that's basically standard stuff for us alcoholics. That's where we get to. That's where it leads us. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal, underline abnormal, and above it in very small printing, we're going to write obsession/allergy. Now, Bob didn't understand that he had this, right? But that's what it is, abnormal. Obsession/allergy. The man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. Asterisk. This refers to Bill's first visit with Dr. Bob. These men later became co-founders of AA. Bill's story opens the text of this book. Dr. Bob's leads the story section. So, Dr. Bob, he agreed to his wife that he would go over there and he would listen to this guy after a lot of argumentation back and forth. And he said, I'll give this guy 10 to 15 minutes. Well, they went in the room and they talked for hours. When our friend, we're gonna highlight the next 5 lines. When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. So right after the asterisk where it says what it meant to be alcoholic, we're going to write war stories okay. Bill went out there. Dr. Bob was expecting this guy to say, Dr. Bob, you're sinful. Dr. Bob, why can't you pull yourself together? You got no willpower. You're killing your family. You're going to lose your house. You lousy, no good for nothing. Why can't you? But you know what? Bill didn't do that. And Bill did not talk to Dr. Bob about Dr. Bob's drinking. Bill talked to Dr. Bob about Bill's drinking, right? And he gave him the war stories, and Dr. Bob identified with it, right? And then Bill, early on, Bill saw the importance of getting people to identify. But the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. Next to that, off to the right, we're going to write, he was a doctor. He was a doctor, okay? He told how he lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism, right? So he's afraid he's going to lose what little of his practice he's got left. He had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. Why, he argued, should he lose the remainder of his business only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people from whom he made his livelihood? He would do anything, he said, but that. So next to that paragraph, off to the right, we're going to write, wouldn't do 9. Wouldn't do 9. Dr. Bob didn't want to do step 9. He said, that's too much. That's carrying this thing too far. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home. Sometime later, and just as, highlight the next 3 lines, he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he went on a roaring bender. You can stop highlighting there. For him, this was the spree that ended all sprees. He saw that he would have to face his problem squarely, that God might give him mastery. Now, what happened is he said, hey, I've got to go to this medical convention out in Atlantic City. I've got to go there and compare notes with the other doctors and get caught up. And of course, Dr. Bob's wife is saying, don't let him go, Bill. Do not let him go. He gets drunk every year. Bill said, we've got to learn how to stand on our own 2 feet. We've got to learn how to live in this world. And he let him go. And sure enough, Dr. Bob went on a couple of day blackout, and he showed up in the middle of the night, called his nurse. Nurse called Bill, and Bob's wife said, come get him, he's drunk. Right? So they went and got him. And Dr. Bob, he said, Bill, tomorrow I've got to do surgery, and I'm the only one that can do it because I did the first part of the surgery. I got to cut back into the guy and finish it. And he said, I can't do it. I'm afraid I can't do it. So they coffeed him and they walked him. They coffeed him and they walked him. And the next morning, when Dr. Bob woke up, he looked at Bill and he said, I'm going to go through with it. And Bill was thinking that Dr. Bob was talking about the surgery, but Dr. Bob was actually talking about the rest of the steps. So Dr. Bob, Bill did drive him to the hospital. He was shaking pretty bad. Bill gave him a couple of beers. He went upstairs. He did the surgery. It came off well. Bill was waiting in the parking lot, and Dr. Bob didn't show up. Bill went home. Dr. Bob doesn't show up. He doesn't show up. Of course, Bill is thinking, I gave him the beer. The allergy kicked in. He's getting drunk. He's out there getting drunk. What did I do? How stupid was I? Well, long about midnight, Dr. Bob shows up, and he's sober. And Bill is like, where in the devil have you been? And Dr. Bob says I've been going up and down the street making amends to those I'd harmed through my drinking. And that was the last drink Dr. Bob ever took. So let's write June 10th, 1935, next to the paragraph that we're about to read. One morning he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking. We think that people don't know, but you know what? Everybody knows. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business. After that, we're going to write step 9. Step 9. At midnight, he came home exhausted but very happy. He has not had a drink since. As we shall see, he now means a great deal to his community, and the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4. But life was not easy for the two friends. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. Both saw that they must, circle must, and then underline, keep spiritually active. Underline those 3 words. One day they called up the head nurse of a local hospital. Highlight the next 4 words. They explained their need. They didn't say, hey, we're going to come in riding our white horse and save some alcoholics you got in there. They explained their need. They said, as part of our program, we've got to go out and carry this message to other alcoholics. If we don't do that, we might drink. We might go backwards. They explained their need, right? And inquired if she had a first-class alcoholic prospect. After prospect, we're going to write Sister Nyasha. Sister Nyasha was who they got a hold of. Now, off to the left where we highlighted must keep spiritually active, we're going to write something. We're going to write help others or we will drink. Help others or we will drink. And, my sponsor, he hammered that home into me. He said, if you're not out there trying to help others quite actively, he said, you're going to backslide and you're going to end up back on the bottle. And he just kept hammering that home, and he really got me to believe that. And you know what? You start working with other people, and it makes you feel better. All of a sudden, you've got self-esteem. You're helping other people. Your life has meaning. You've got excitement. There's great excitement when you're out there helping other people. And not only do you get the benefits of never having to take another drink, but you actually, you grow as a person and you get a pretty good life, and you build the fellowship by doing this. I meet with people that I've gone through the book with. Every Sunday morning we get together and we meet. And, it's not a formal meeting. We talk about what's going on in our lives. We offer support. We give feedback and advice. And, we see, hey, how are we helping others? How are we becoming closer to God? And it's just a wonderful fellowship that grows up about you when you do this. I hope everybody, that goes through the Code Blue gets to experience this wonderful fellowship. She replied, yes, we've got a corker. He's just beaten up a couple of nurses. Goes off his head completely when he's drinking, but he's a grand chap when he's sober. Yeah. Though he's been in here, highlight, though he's been in here 8 times in the last 6 months. Just highlight that little sentence there. And off to the left, we're going to write AA number 3, 10-day difference, Bill Dotson and Dr. Bob. AA number 3, 10-day difference, Bill Dotson and Dr. Bob. Now, the other thing that Bill and Dr. Bob did, right, in addition to Dr. Bob going out and doing step 9, right, because, the book says if we don't do that, we're not going to make it. So he did that. But Bill and Bob also refocused, right? They had been talking all this spiritual stuff before Bob relapsed. Now they're refocusing on getting out there and helping other people, right? They said we had better get out there right away and start helping other people. And that's what they did. Understand he was once a well-known lawyer in town, but just now we've got him strapped down tight. Asterisk, this refers to Bill and Dr. Bob's first visit to AA number 3. See the Pioneer section. This resulted in AA's first group at Akron, Ohio in 1935. So again, where we wrote 10-day difference, Bill Dotson and Dr. Bob, we're going to write June 10th and June 20th. And anytime you guys are in the AA rooms and you see the picture of the two guys helping the guy with the T-shirt sitting on the bed, that's Bill and Dr. Bob. It's called The Man on the Bed, and that's Bill and Dr. Bob 12-stepping Bill Dotson in that hospital. Here was a prospect, all right, but by the description, none too promising. So this guy, he's been in here 8 times in the last 6 months. This guy is hopeless. I mean, he is in trouble. The use of spiritual principles in such cases was not so well understood as it is now. But one of the friends said, put him in a private room, we'll be down. Now, back in the day when they took you off the ward and put you in a private room, that usually meant that you were dying. So Bill Dotson is starting to worry here. 2 days later, a future fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. Who are you fellows and why this private room? I was always in a ward before. Said one of the visitors, highlight, we're giving you a treatment for alcoholism. Just that little bit right there. After alcoholism, write the 12 steps. We're giving you a treatment for alcoholism. Hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, oh, but that's no use. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it. We're going to highlight the next 2 sentences as well. For an hour, the 2 friends told him about their drinking experiences. Over and over, he would say, that's me, I drink like that. So right next to that, we're going to write program of identification. This is a program. Bill realized how well that worked with Dr. Bob, and they're now doing it with Bill Dotson, right? That's what happens when we share our stories with other people, right? And that's what we do. And when we talk at speaker meetings, you know, we talk about what it was like. We talk about what happened, and we talk about what it's like now. And people can identify with that and say, hey, man, maybe this thing is going to work with me. You know, so again, you know, Bill Dotson was expecting them to talk about Bill Dotson's problems, his weak willpower, his sinfulness, but they didn't. They talked about Bill and Bob's drinking, right? Not Bill Dotson's. The man in the bed was told of the acute poisoning from which he suffered, how it deteriorates the body of an alcoholic and warps his mind. Underline the next sentence. There was much talk about the mental state preceding the first drink. So right next to that, guys, we're gonna write the words mental obsession. Mental obsession. And again, you know, we've been talking about this from day one, how from time to time our brain overcomes all ideas to the contrary. Maybe we just got out of jail. It overcomes all ideas to the contrary and tells us it's okay to take that first drink, that it's going to be different this time, right? Or maybe that we deserve that first drink, right? That's the mental obsession. And every time we take that first drink, or your sponsee that you're going to be out there helping, right? We've got to explain to him that he or she is stone cold sober before they pick up that drink. Yes, that's me, said the sick man, the very image. You fellas know your stuff all right, but I don't see what good it'll do. You fellas are somebody. I was once, but I'm a nobody now. From what you tell me, I know more than ever. I can't stop. At this, both the visitors burst into a laugh. Said the future fellows anonymous, damn little to laugh about that I can see. Underline that. Damn little to laugh about that I can see. And I got to tell you guys, I remember when I got out of detox and I started coming into these meetings, and people were laughing about John's little problems and John's little things. I became quite upset because I thought that I was the center of the earth, and my problems were insurmountable. The 2 friends spoke of their spiritual experience and told them about the course of action. Underline course of action, and underneath it write 12 steps they carried out. He interrupted, I used to be strong for the church, but that won't fix it. I've prayed to God on hangover mornings and sworn that I'd never touch another drop, but by 9 o'clock I'd be boiled as an owl. So, you know, Bill D's, he's got the foxhole prayers there. Next day found the prospect more receptive. He had been thinking it over. Maybe you're right, he said. God ought to be able to do anything. Then he added, he sure didn't do much for me when I was trying to fight this booze racket alone. Now remember those 4 questions that they asked Bill Dotson. Remember those questions that we covered earlier today. On the third day, the lawyer gave his life to the care and direction of his Creator. Next to that, write third step and put a little arrow pointing in. And let's write page 63. And said he was perfectly willing to do anything necessary. So he's taking the third step right there, and he says, you know what? I'm going to go through with the rest of the program. If I can get a sponsee to do that, I'm batting 1,000, man. His wife came, scarcely daring to be hopeful, though she thought she saw something different about her husband already. Underline this little line: he had begun to have a spiritual experience. And you know, guys, that happened for me when I walked across the threshold into my first Code Blue. I had a sudden feeling that things were going to be okay. And I have no idea why, but I kept going back, and it turned out to be true. That things were going to be okay, and they were okay. That afternoon, so I tell you what, when we make that decision that we're going to do it, something's going to overcome us, and we're going to feel a little bit of peace and serenity right then and there. That afternoon, he put on his clothes and walked from the hospital. Underline 3 words: a free man. A free man. He entered a political campaign, making speeches, frequenting men's gathering places of all sorts, often staying up all night. He lost the race by only a narrow margin. Underline the next sentence: but he had found God, and in finding God had found himself. Underline the next sentence: that was in June 1935. He never drank again. Stop highlighting there. He too has become a respected and useful member of his community. Okay, now we're going to highlight the next 4 lines. He has helped other men recover and is a power in the church from which he was long absent. So you see, there were 3 alcoholics in that town who now felt they had to give to others what they had found or be sunk. So they really are getting out there and trying to pass this message. That's our primary purpose. After several failures to find others, a 4th turned up. Next to a 4th turned up, we can write Ernie Galbraith. Ernie Galbraith, Galbraith. And underneath Ernie Galbraith, you can write married Dr. Bob's daughter Sue. Married Dr. Bob's daughter Sue. And again, as I'm sitting here by myself, I might be going a little bit faster. So if you've got to rewind to write these notes, so be it. He came through an acquaintance who had heard the good news. He proved to be a devil-may-care young fellow whose parents could not make out whether he wanted to stop drinking or not. They were deeply religious people, much shocked by their son's refusal to have anything to do with the church. He suffered horribly from his sprees, but it seemed as if nothing could be done for him. He consented, however, to go to the hospital, where he occupied the very room recently vacated by the lawyer. He had 3 visitors. After a bit, he said, "The way you fellas put this spiritual stuff makes sense. I'm ready to do business." Underline that and write 2nd step. I'm ready to do business. I guess the old folks were right after all. So 1 more was added to the fellowship. All this time, our friend of the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. Underline, he was there 3 months. Now, you know, I've got a sad note that I guess I got to tell you about Ernie Galbraith. You know, he did marry Dr. Bob's daughter, Sue. And, you know, Bill and Bob said, you know what, you've got a family. You go take care of your family. Yeah, we're not going to have you out on the road with us doing all this Alcoholic Anonymous work. So you go take care of your family. And because he wasn't out there practicing these principles and trying to help others, Ernie Galbraith relapsed, and he was never able to get sober again. And as a result of that, Dr. Bob's daughter Sue had some real resentment towards Alcoholics Anonymous. It's unfortunate. They should have kept him with him on the firing line. He now returned home, so Bill went home, leaving behind his first acquaintance, the lawyer, and the devil-may-care chap. These men had found something brand new in life. Underline the next 4 lines. Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. Okay, so next to that, we're going to write something. We're going to write, give it to keep it. Give it to keep it. Receive happiness and usefulness. Give it to keep it. Receive happiness and usefulness. They shared their homes, their slender resources, and gladly devoted their spare hours to fellow sufferers. They were willing, by day or night, to place a new man in the hospital and visit him afterward. They grew in numbers. They experienced a few distressing failures, but in those cases they made an effort to bring the man's family into a spiritual way of living, thus relieving much worry and suffering. Right, the starting of the whole idea about Al-Anon, and a lot of people that they failed with in those early days. I think we better have some gratitude for them, because I think these pioneers they learned more from their failures many times than they did from their successes. If something failed, they would discard it, and if something worked, they would keep it. A year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. So now we're up to 10. Seeing much of each other, scarce an evening passed that someone's home did not shelter a little gathering of men and women, happy in their release and constantly thinking how they might present their discovery to some newcomer. In addition to these casual get-togethers, it became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Underline the next 3 lines. Aside from fellowship and sociability, the prime object was to provide a time and place where new people might bring their problems. Off to the left, we're going to write over 1,000 meetings a year here. And, I wrote that about 5.5 years ago, and I mean, it seems to me that there's probably more like 5,000 meetings a year here, if not more. So, very prophetic what they started. Outsiders became interested. One man and his wife placed their large home at the disposal of this strangely assorted crowd. This couple has since become so fascinated that they have dedicated their home to the work. Underline the next 3 lines. Many a distracted wife has visited this house to find loving and understanding companionship among women who knew her problem. Okay, so again, next to that, we're going to write starting Al-Anon. Starting Al-Anon. Because again, guys, this is a family disease and everybody gets sick. It's not just us. I used to think I was the only hurting myself, but this disease brings everybody around us down. Everybody becomes ill. And I got to go back to that documentary on HBO where the woman, was really mad at her husband and who was the alcoholic, and she said, at least idiots like you can go get treatment and therapy. And she said, idiots like me don't have any place to go. Idiots like me who put up with idiots like you. And nobody was telling this woman that there's Al-Anon, and that's where she needed to go, not only to get herself better, but also so she knows what to do in dealing with her alcoholic husband. To hear from the lips of their husbands what had happened to them, to be advised how her own wayward mate might be hospitalized and approached when next he stumbled. Many a man, yet dazed from his hospital experience, has stepped over the threshold of that home into freedom. Many an alcoholic who entered there came away with an answer. He succumbed to that gay crowd inside who laughed at their own misfortunes and understood his. Impressed by those who visited him at the hospital, he capitulated entirely when later, in an upper room of this house, he heard the story of some man whose experience closely tallied with his own. The expression on the faces of the women, that indefinable something in the eyes of the men, the stimulating and electric atmosphere of the place conspired to let him know that there was haven at last. The very practical approach to his problems, the absence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, the uncanny understanding which these people had were irresistible. He and his wife would leave elated by the thought of what they could now do for some stricken acquaintance and his family. Underlined at the end of the paragraph, they knew they had a host of new friends. It seemed they had known these strangers always. They had seen miracles, and one was to come to them. They had visioned the great reality, their loving and all-powerful Creator. Next to that we just highlighted, we're going to write promise. There's another promise. And you can see that they've capitalized great reality, another name for deity, right? Their loving and all-powerful Creator. To me, that kind of symbolizes the fact that I've woken up spiritually and I look at things differently now. I now have a great reality that I was completely blind to, right? I'm not, when we wake up spiritually, at least me, I don't think we become any kind of top 10 spiritual gurus at all. It's just that we're awake to things that we never saw before, right? I mean, the idea that it's more important for me to go out and try to help others than to watch a football game, for example, right? Even if it's the Super Bowl. Now this house will hardly accommodate its weekly visitors, for they number 60 or 80 as a rule. Alcoholics are being attracted from far and near, from surrounding towns. Families drive long distances to be present. A community 30 miles away has 15 fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Next to that, right, Cleveland. Cleveland was the third little center. So we've got New York, we've got Akron, and we've got Cleveland. And by the time this book went to press in 1939, it started, there were 40, but now there's 100, and some of them are in Cleveland. Being a large place, we think that someday its fellowship will number many hundreds. Asterix, written in 1939. So 2, 4, 6, we're going to highlight the next 6 lines. But life among Alcoholics Anonymous is more than attending gatherings and visiting hospitals, cleaning up old scrapes, helping to settle family differences, explaining the disinherited son to his irate parents, lending money and securing jobs for each other when justified. These are everyday occurrences. Stop highlighting there and go back and circle the 2 words, when justified. I got to tell you, nothing gave me a greater pleasure than securing a job for the second sponsee that I ever had. And he's still with the company today. He went on to manage a warehouse, and now he's got a great job working in our office, and the promises are coming true for him, right? I have an alcoholic living in my home when he's in town, and just being able to help is a wonderful thing. No one is too discredited or has sunk too low to be welcomed cordially. Triple underline, if he means business. Underline that and draw a little arrow off to the side and write willing to do the work. Willing to do the work. I had 3 sponsees that were raring to go and ready to do the next Code Blue session, to go through and do the work. And, I got them when they were very low, right? And they're willing. And, once they repaired themselves physically and they started to think about it, I lost all 3 of them. They started feeling a little better, and they say, I think this thing is too drastic for us. So I really hope and pray that they come. But I think that these 3 fellas might have to go out and get beat up some more before they come back in. Social distinctions, petty rivalries, and jealousies, these are laughed out of countenance. Being wrecked in the same vessel, being restored and united under one God, with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others. The things which matter so much to some people no longer signify much to them. How could they? Only under slightly different conditions, the same thing is taking place in many eastern cities. In one of these, there is a well-known hospital for the treatment of alcoholic and drug addiction. Again, you can write the town's hospital off to the left, the town's hospital, and you can write Bill was there, Bill W. was there, and I suppose underneath that you might as well write Dr. Silkworth, because we're going to talk a little bit about him, Dr. Silkworth. There's a well-known hospital for the treatment of alcoholic and drug addiction. 6 years ago, one of our number was a patient there. That's Bill W. Many of us have felt for the first time, underline the next to the period, the presence and power of God within its walls. Underline that. Now, off to the left, we're going to write, off to the right, we're going to write something. Next to power of God, we're going to write here at meetings. Here at meetings. I firmly believe that the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous are a sacred place. So the presence and power of God within its walls, we're going to write here at meetings next to that. We are greatly indebted to the doctor in attendance there. That's why we wrote Dr. Silkworth. For he, although it might prejudice his own work, has told of us of his belief in ours. So he's a scientist with a scientific approach, and he's saying these hopeless cases, there's nothing we can do for them. What you've got to do, the hopeless cases, he sends them to Alcoholics Anonymous and hopes that they find a spiritual answer. Every few days, this doctor suggests our approach to one of his patients. Understanding our work, he can do this with an eye to selecting, underline, those who are willing and able to recover on a spiritual basis. There it is. Underline that, and next to that sentence, let's write, do the 12 steps. Do the 12 steps. Many of us former patients go there to help, right? So that's what we do too, right? We go to treatment centers, we go to hospitals, we go to detox, we go to prisons, right? We reach out to these people and let them know that there's another way. And you know, I think I talked about this earlier, but I love it the way Bill Wilson, you know, when he goes to people, he hands out, he puts his hand out, and in one hand he says, this is hopelessness. It's absolutely hopeless in the one hand, and then all of a sudden he reaches out his other hand and he gives you hope, right? That's what he does. That's what we do by the sharing of our stories. In this eastern city, there are informal meetings such as we have described to you, where you may now see scores of members. There are the same fast friendships. There is the same helpfulness to one another as you find among our Western friends. There is a good bit of travel between East and West, and we foresee a great increase in this helpful interchange. Someday we hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Next to that sentence, off to the left, we're going to write prophetic. Prophetic, Prophetic. How prophetic is that? To some extent, this is already true. Some of us are salesmen and go about. Little clusters of 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities. Through contact with our 2 larger centers, those of us who travel drop in as often as we can. This practice enables us to lend a hand, at the same time avoiding certain alluring distractions of the road about which any traveling man can inform you. Asterisk. Written in 1939, in 2009 there are over 116,000 groups. There is AA activity in more than 180 countries with an estimated membership of over 2 million. Now, you know, we really need to hold our hand out, because if they're 10% of the population, there's probably 40 million alcoholics. And you know what? We've got 2 million in AA. There's a lot of people out there suffering and dying. You know, incidentally, funny enough, there's like 26 million big books out there too, right? If the 2 million people each have one, where the heck are the other 24 million big books? Probably on a dusty shelf somewhere. Thus we grow, and so can you. Though you be but, underline, one man with this book in your hand, we believe and hope it contains all you will need to begin. Just underline that little bit. We have this book in our hand, and we can do a full meeting with this book. And you know, my sponsor, he really hammered it home to me that you know, you go through Code Blue, you go through this with a sponsee, you make your notes, you've got your information, you go to meetings, you bring your big book with you to every single meeting. Because what if you're in a room and a suffering alcoholic needs some help, and you say, my God, I know this passage that I think is going to help this fella. We carry our books with us, and we refer to our book often. Remember, this is a textbook. It's a textbook to be studied, to be learned from, and also to teach others with. You know, people say you can't teach the 12 steps. I say nonsense. Every time we take somebody through this book and through the steps, that's exactly what we do. We teach the 12 steps, and by doing that, we rework them ourselves. We know what you are thinking. You are saying to yourself, I'm jittery and alone. I couldn't do that, but you can. You forget that you have just now tapped a source of power much greater than yourself. To duplicate with such backing what we have accomplished is only a matter, underline, of willingness, patience, and labor. Okay, so after labor, we're going to write program of action / work. This is a program of action, and it is a program of work. You know, I see some meetings where the older members, they stop going, right? And I mean, that is one of the most horrible things that I could ever see. You know, we've got ours and we're going home. We're not going to share it. You know, I go to these meetings whether I want to or not. I automatically get in my car and I go because, you know, what if there's somebody there that might hear something I said that might be helped? We've got to continue to go and share at these meetings and try to help other people. That's where we get our recruits. We know of an AA member who was living in a large community. He had lived there but a few weeks when he found that the place probably contained more alcoholics per square mile than any city in the country. Next to that, we can write Detroit. And under Detroit, we're going to write The Man Who Mastered Fear, page 246. The Man Who Mastered Fear, page 246. This was only a few days ago at this writing, 1939. The authorities were much concerned. He got in touch with a prominent psychiatrist who had undertaken certain responsibility for the mental health of the community. The doctor proved to be able and exceedingly anxious to adopt any workable method of handling the situation. So he inquired, what did our friend have on the ball? And off to the right, we can write Archie T. Our friend proceeded to tell him, and with such good effect that the doctor agreed to test among his patients and certain other alcoholics from a clinic which he attends. Arrangements were also made with the chief psychiatrist of a large public hospital to select still others, underlined at the end of the paragraph, from the stream of misery which flows through that institution. So after institution, we're going to write detox/treatment centers. Detox/treatment centers. And you know, guys, the good treatment centers are the ones that funnel people to AA. I said it before and I'll say it again. Treatment is discovery, but AA is recovery. And I never understood that. I thought I got out of treatment and I thought I was cured. I never understood that I had a lifelong disease, right? We don't treat diabetes like that. Diabetes gets treated throughout the whole life. And our treatment is to continue to stay close to God and to continue to try to help others, to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. So our fellow worker will soon have friends galore. Some of them may sink and perhaps never get up. But if our experience is a criterion, more than half of those approached will become fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. When a few men in this city have found themselves and have discovered the joy of helping others to face life again, there will be no stopping until everyone in that town has had this opportunity to recover if he can and will. Right? We got a lousy winter storm going on. Tomorrow, I've got the morning off. I'm going to be driving Code Blue Flyers to various other AA clubs in Minneapolis to let people know that if they're ready to do this work, that there's a place for them to go to get well, right? Because we've got to do more than just stop drinking. We've got to get well, and we get well when we do this work. Still, you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that. So you must remember, highlight, that your real reliance is always upon Him. Just highlight that little sentence there. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Okay, asterisk. Alcoholics Anonymous will be glad to hear from you. Address P.O. Box 459, Grand Central Station, New York, 10163. Now after crave, after that little asterisk, we're going to write give your phone number / take theirs, right? Take theirs. Guys, you got to remember how hard it was. I mean, so many people over the years, over 20 years, they gave me phone numbers, and I could never call any of them. I don't know if I was afraid, if I was too proud, but I couldn't do it. You know, and there were some here this last time, by golly, you know, they said, hey, just give me your number. And how surprised was I when I'm feeling some self-pity and some fear, and I answer the phone and it's, hey, this is so-and-so. I got your number at the meeting the other night. So take their number and let's call them. Let's call them. Let's get out of our comfort zone and do this, right? Okay, guys. So let's see here. I'm gonna read a few notes, and then we're gonna end this section. So. Again, I came into these rooms, I was restless, irritable, and discontented. I was full of guilt, shame, and remorse. I couldn't stop using, right? I was running on selfishness and self-centeredness. I didn't care about you. Hell, I didn't care about me. As I was supported by the fellowship, I applied the steps to my life under the guidance of a sponsor and by going through the first 164 pages with him. I was transformed into somebody who has some peace of mind, some serenity and happiness, and the willingness to do anything I can to help others, right? I've never felt love, patience, tolerance, compassion, and goodwill. I've never felt that till now. I've never had a kind and loving God in my life till now. Right? I discovered that I can now do all kinds of things that I'm not supposed to be able to do. Right? And they all deal in the realm of personal relationships and helping other folks. This is an entire change in the way that I think. It's an entire change in the way that I act. This is what's known as a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, a personality change sufficient to recover from alcoholism. That's the psychic change that Dr. Silkworth, he talked about it. That's what we need to get to recover from this disease, right? Again, the touchstones, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Those are the hows of the program. And I'm going to say it again, guys, if we don't change, if we don't become different people, we're going to drink again, man. So we do this work and we become different people. Okay, so I was listening to this wonderful woman the other day, and she told me about the rules for the grocery store. The grocery store rules. And I'm like, well, what the heck is she going to talk about? Well, she was really using them as an allegory to how we should live our lives. She said, number one, she said, if you only go to the 10 items or less line if you've got 10 items or less, right? We no longer put ourselves above the rules, right? Always putting ourselves first in front of other people because, we come first, right? So, 15, 20 items, you go to that line, no. We go there only if we have 10 items or less. We're going to follow the rules for a change. Now, the other thing, when we're standing in that line, we don't look at the person in front of us, how many items they have. We don't do that. We've been taking other people's inventory our whole lives, right? And I catch myself doing this in AA, right? And I got to stop. The only inventory I can take is mine, right? This one fella said, I've done 43 inventories, right? And then I said, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And he said, but only one was mine. That's what we do, okay? If we take something, I take a big old steak and I decide I don't want it, I don't put it on the shelf. I take it all the way back to where I got it and I put it back in the cooler. We clean up after ourselves. We clean up our mistakes, resolutely clean them up as we go along, right? We keep clean. If somebody needs help out with their groceries, we help them, right? We're going to help other people. Okay, so let's see what else I've got here. I've got something else if I could just find it. Oh yeah, okay. So, when we work these steps, right? And we've had that it's spiritual experience and we're helping other people and we're trying to practice these principles in all our affairs. And I got to tell you guys, that's the harder part. Practicing these principles at home and at work is the harder part. What we do is we go back into the world and we be an example to other people. We've got to be an example to other people. We've got to let people see us. If nobody sees us, how can we be an example to other people, right? Some people, they point to me and they say, John Henry, that guy used to be a useless drunk, a hopeless crack addict, a conniving pill popper. Boy, look at him now. He's helping people at work. He's helping other alcoholics. He's rebuilding his relationships and he's rebuilding his life. How in the hell did that ever happen, right? So we try to live by these principles principles at home and at work. And I got to tell you, that is the harder part. Now, the other thing, too, is I want to ask all of you, and I asked this of the people that went through Code Blue, and I'm asking you who are listening to this tape. I want to ask all of you guys, what do you stand for? What do you stand for? What in the hell do you stand for? Now, if you can't answer that question, then you don't know what you stand for. So how about something simple? How about the principles of this program? How about the steps we are taught, right? Because they're also the principles that we live by on a daily basis. Honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, love, forgiveness. By the way, guys, when you forgive, you set a prisoner free, and that prisoner is you, right? Justice, discipline, spiritual awareness, and service. You know, how about those things, right? So let's get in that arena and let's start playing ball. Start playing ball. You know, I kind of think you got to think that maybe in the 1930s, God must have got sick of seeing all of us die. We've been getting sick and dying for thousands of years, right? So I think that he must have picked Dr. Jung, Roland Hazard, Ebby Thatcher, Bill Wilson, Dr. Silkworth, Dr. Bob, and the First 100. He must have picked them to get this AA thing put together, right? So that we can have it today, right? Well, all of these people are dead now. They're all dead, right? But I got to tell you, if God was picking people back then, I think he's picking people now. I think he's picking everybody that goes through a Code Blue. I think he's picking the people at the meetings. I think he's picking you people listening to this tape, right? He's picking us now, right? Because, guys, should any of us be alive today, right? Think about that. Should you be alive today? So I think God is picking you folks. He's letting you go through hell so you would learn what you needed to know. So now that he's ready to use you, he's removed your obsession and he's woken you up spiritually, right? So, you know, get in that arena and start playing ball. I think this quote is from Horace Mann, and I think it's oh golly, be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humankind. You know, just about everything in AA we've borrowed from other people, so what the heck? Why not that? And I think I said the Dalai Lama prayer earlier, so I'm going to say I love this prayer. It's kind of a poem prayer. I am the place where God shines through, for he and I are one, not two. We need not worry, fret, nor plan. He wants me as I am. And if I be relaxed and free, then he'll carry out his plan through me. You know, so again, live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. Right action is the key to good living. The joy of good living is the theme of AA's 12th step. Let's finish our last two paragraphs now. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. Now remember, they're the only suggestions we've got. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. Ask him in your morning meditation what he can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. And we're going to notice that great fact is highlighted. So next to that, what we just highlighted, we're going to write recipe for relationship. Recipe for relationship. Obviously, recipe for relationship with God. I heard a fellow the other night, and you know, every morning when I got up, I learned from another fellow that I invite God into my life. This other fellow said, he says this out loud every morning. First thing when he opens his eyes, he doesn't even get up, he says, "Good morning, God." Right? So I started doing that out loud, you know, and then I say, "Please come into my life, today, right? Last paragraph. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Above that, we're going to write 1 through 3. 1 through 3. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. We're going to write 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 above that. 4, 5, 6, 7, excuse me. Clear away the wreckage of your past. There's 8 and 9 right there. Clear away the wreckage of your past, 8 and 9. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge, underline that word trudge, the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Next to that, let's write 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so we're going to write one more thing, guys. We're going to write one more thing right underneath that. We're going to write, do what the first 100 did, and you will get what they got. Do what the first 100 did, and you will get what they got, right? And what they got is sobriety and a good life. I mean, they got so much more than that, but sobriety, friendships, and a good life, right? Thank everybody for listening to this Code Blue session. And once again, may God bless you and keep you until then. And as always, we're going to end, today we're going to end with the third step prayer. And that's one that I say every day. So if you're willing, let's get down on our knees if you're listening to this. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Peace. Thank you, and look for more Code Blues to be posted online, because again, guys, every time I do one of these, I'm in a different place, and they're all different. So thank you for listening. God bless.